I woke up this morning and I've been thinking how amazing it all is and connecting more dots uh, and understanding so much, which I love. I love when I have insights. And today I'm thinking about attachment, suffering, individuation, and self mastery. And what do all of these things mean and how are they connected? When we get born, we get conditioned or domesticated, as Domingo Ruiz calls it, um, to fit into the culture, the family that we're born. And through that process, we learn a lot of useful things. We learn to walk, to talk, later on to write, um, to do basic things, to take care of ourselves. Uh, like what is good to eat, what is not, how to behave, how to act, uh, how to use a table, a chair, a bed, a fork. But in that process, we also pick up a lot of limiting beliefs and a lot of damaging beliefs uh, and ideas about who we are and what we're capable of or not. And naturally, that would depend very much on the family and the system that you grow up in, how many limitations you pick up, and how many beliefs that actually empower you. But usually there's no perfect situation. Uh, and later on, as you know, we become adults, and for everybody that could be different time, uh, we can start encountering situations with beliefs that contradict ours or expand our beliefs. And that's where adaptability is very important and the ability to change. And when we encounter a belief that contradict ours or is different, to be able to look at it with curiosity, to actually have a developed thinking faculty and be able to see, okay, is this belief actually one that could serve me better because it empowers me more than the belief I currently have? Or is one that restricts me, or it's kind of like neutral? For example, uh, when I came to the US, I was not used to eating eggs for breakfast. It was extremely weird to me because in Bulgaria, where I'm from, we eat breakfast eggs for breakfast for lunch or dinner. And at first, I was very opposed to eating eggs for breakfast and could not come around to doing it, just because in my whole life, 20 something years, I've been used to eating eggs for lunch or dinner, and that's the power of habit. But later on, I was like, okay, let me try this, let me give it a try. And I tried it, and I was like, okay, it's not so bad. I can see why people do it. And now I can eat eggs for breakfast. And it's so funny that it's such a simple example and something so silly, but it's true. And a lot of times, that's a really good way to come to realize the beliefs that you have, to move continents and countries and be exposed to a different set of beliefs. And that's only then you can see the ones that you've grown up with and see them as beliefs that you build your identity um, around. And you can see also how the people in the country that you're in are conditioned according to a different set of beliefs. And then you can begin that process of changing and adapting, yet deciding how much to change and adapt and what and which of the new beliefs you can adopt that really serve you, which ones to adopt to just culturally fit in, which ones to actually make a part of your personality. And that process goes on in life when we, have a different job, let's say, and are exposed to new people. When we travel, it's a way to expand. That's a really wonderful way to expand. When different things in life happen and we go through big transitioning events, that changes, like the death of a loved one, uh, divorce, a big breakup. And I guess that's how character is formed. And it's how you walk through the fire. Um, so when you realize that sometimes you're very attached to a certain belief, but you encounter information uh, that makes you not believe in it anymore, and you realize how it's actually limiting. For example, it could be a religious belief or a cultural belief that is damaging to you, or a family belief that is damaging. But it's a huge part of your identity, so much so that you believe that you're it. Can you and could you shed it because you've been exposed to something that feels like a truth to your soul, and that belief is no longer true for you? And in those moments, we go through the dark night of the soul and those ego deaths when we realize that we have structured our life around something that we believed was true, and we held dear and protected it. And then at one point we realized, oh wow, that was never true. And the fact that it was never true doesn't mean that the life I have previously lived until now is invalidated and fake. Or do I just accept the fact that no, that life was true because until that point of time I believed that thing, but now I'm exposed to a higher truth. And in order for me to progress and live it according to my values and my truth, I have to discard that belief and everything that goes with it. And that's where Bukowski's poem comes in, that you have to keep going, and whether that means losing jobs, girlfriends, family. Because a lot of times, the fundamental beliefs that we've been raised with are attached to a lot. And it doesn't always mean, because I've done a lot of that, it doesn't always mean that you lose things, because first you become and find more of yourself. So that's the process of individuation we're talking about. Um, but you do have to let go if you do choose to keep your eyes open and discard that certain belief that no longer resonates with your truth, which a lot of people choose not to, and stay in familiar situations, whether it's relationships they've outgrown or belief systems and social situations, family situations, jobs, just because of the security of the familiar. But if you choose to individuate, become an individual who has their own truth and lives according to their own values, then you have to let go of the familiar, which means the familiar version of self that you've been used to and clung to for many years. And that's how spiritual awakenings begin, when we are waking up to the truth of the spirit within, which is different from the truths of conditioning and domestication that we have received. And the truth of the spirit is eternal, it's immortal, it never changes. And if we have the courage to live that life, to live that spiritual life, which is being true to your spirit, that's spirituality. The more you trust spirit, in yourself and your inner voice versus what the outside of is telling you of who you are, who you're supposed to be, what are you supposed to do, how are you supposed to act, and what are you supposed to believe in. Then you know the more you individuate if you choose that path. But that path is a path of constant letting go. And sometimes when you no longer believe a certain thing that the people that you were raised with or by believe, it can cause a big rift and it can cause a total breakup of the relationship. And sometimes it can help them also arrive at more truth, come into more consciousness, and be able to coexist with you, even if they don't fully consciously want to accept that yet. But you're able to honor each other's truth without wanting the other person to be different or change. And that is love. That is true unconditional love. And those are the relationships and bonds that you want to keep in your life. Because love liberates and is free. And love loves you no matter what and supports you. So in life, we go through a lot of these deaths and rebirths, just like the lobster. And every time we go through one, it's a very vulnerable process, but it's exciting and exhilarating at the same time. If you are on that path, you're gonna know what I mean. And every time you arrive into more truth, there's that like feeling the loss of old identity coming up. And there is a point to choose and decide, do I keep going forward or do I stay right here where I'm comfortable? And while the spirit is happening, it's such a mix because you're like, oh, I've seen this truth, I've got a glimpse, I want to keep looking. But then the more I see, the more I realize that it will shatter everything I've known until now, and I'm not gonna be the same person anymore. And I have to go through another ego death, another spiritual awakening, another complete transformation. And do I keep going and face that and expand into more? Because you're basically choosing to consciously self destruct in a sense. Or do I stay where I'm comfortable because I have finally found some comfort in something that I think is love and something that I think is true connection? But if you want to live a truly authentic life, you know that you can't be looking back. You know that the truth is always going to be there. And once you've got a glimpse of it, you cannot unsee. So you know that if you say you'll always be unhappy, because there's something inside of you that is constantly pulling you towards more evolution. So if you're that kind of person, you will face the truth with courage and you will dissolve these parts of yourself. You'll be able to let them go, forgive that old version of you and everybody that supported it, and keep going. And some people come with you, and some people will not. And that's just life. But new people will come in, and the new truths that you've expanded, and you're going to find them there because they've always been there, uh, or are finding their way into that level of truth and authenticity. And that's the exhilarating part where you're like, okay, I'm ready for this new adventure. And that's why life becomes this constant adventure of a process of becoming, like Anais so eloquently put it, eloquently, uh, that life is a process of becoming and a constant growth. And that requires dying to the old versions of ourselves and constantly rebirthing into new, more authentic, liberated versions of ourselves. And that is the self mastery, you see, because you start to live according to your soul and universal truth. And you don't wait on the outside to tell you who you are, what are you supposed to do, what can or you cannot do. And you don't blame anybody or anything on the outside for your limitations and circumstances, but you take full responsibility. And when you are inspired by a role model or, um, you know, some virtue that you want to adopt and incorporate, and you see that there are certain parts of you, certain addictions or habits that will not support that new version, you can take the sword of truth and cut them off, perform a self surgery on the inside, and detach from limiting beliefs, detach from things that no longer serve you, let them go. And do that with compassion, with kindness, with humility, with understanding, yet at the same time with courage, with deliberation, with determination. And that is the hero's journey. And this process is so very quiet and personal. And it can be loud and dramatic, but then it's not really real. Because all of that is done within. And you can have a spiritual life coach or a counselor or a trusted friend that is on the same path that can support you in moments where you know that you're dying. And there's always a doula that appears. It could be a poem, it could be a spiritual text, it could be a movie that you watch and there's some deeper truth in it, or a similar process that you see, or a real life person that shares their story and that helps you decide to keep going. But to me, that's a life worth living, a life that is devoted to love, truth, freedom, and beauty, and to becoming more of yourself, your individual self, and not just being a conditioned entity. And the more individuated you become, the more you perceive people as individuals, and you're able to see their unique beauty and how their particular life events have shaped them. And we no longer profile people based on the color of their skin, nationality, gender, job, where they live, or any external quality, because we don't identify with that stuff. We identify with what is within, we identify with character. And naturally, that's how we look at other people. We want to know, how have the challenges that they have gone through changed them? What do they dream about? What do they love? What makes them light up inside? What are they willing to risk their lives for? What are they willing to risk living their lives for fully? How do they care for themselves? How do they care for others? Their heart and soul, their mind, the resilience of the body that houses all that. emotional intelligence, commitment to living the life of the soul no matter what, respect, accountability, honor, honoring the sacred, honoring the self, honoring others, living as divinity embodied. Oh, and when do we suffer? We suffer when we stay attached to beliefs, constructs, old versions of selves that no longer serve us, but we're not willing to take the courageous step to look towards the truth that we have seen a glimpse of and do the necessary changes to change and elevate. Necessary steps. That's when we suffer. We suffer when we live according to somebody else's truth, somebody else's belief that they haven't even examined if it's true for them or not, but follow blindly because everybody else does. We suffer when we seek external validation and love from the outside, which is false connection. We suffer when we inhabit the shell of somebody that we used to know, but we're afraid to fill it up with the truth of who we are. That's when we suffer.